Okay.
Oh, Singleton Pattern. Great.
Sorry. I read about it. It didn't seem
Did you
super
check the
fun, but I
repo?
thought, sorry.
Did you check the repo I sent you?
Yes, I
GitHub
did.
repo.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So welcome all. This is our 64th edition of PC Open Discussion. As we agreed last week, there were so many questions that were delayed because of what's new in 2021 release wave 2. So I'll try to cover as many things as we can today, and then otherwise we'll continue it in following weeks. So today we are going to talk about Singleton Pattern. That was a question from someone last week. Then Abhinav here had a question about flow filter, and somebody also had a question around flow filter in APIs. Then there are some questions in which were submitted either via email, social media, or some other places. And then, if time permits, we'll make it open for everyone to have open questions if there are any. Okay, so let's go through the normals. Where you go for registration, this is the page which gets updated after this meeting most of the time, otherwise tomorrow. And there's a link to register over there where you can register. There's no timeline for it. You can just register even 5 minutes before the session or even during the session, I think. If you are here and don't want to get into this hassle of registering every week, then drop your name and email, and I'll make sure you get invited going forward. Okay. So let's start. What's new this week? So DynamicsCon is back. The fourth DynamicsCon virtual event was announced last week, and it's happening in March 15th to 17th, the same 4-hour thing that happened last time. Anybody who is contributing in any manner to the community, I think it's a great space to try out your presentation skills, understand what it takes to be speaking somewhere. Last time, I guess we had one person from our BC Open Discussion meeting who presented there. The rules are still same. There are 3 sessions allowed per presenter if somebody has to. And based on votings, out of those 3, 1 will be selected if it comes in that voting area. The only change is that this time there are 2 types of session. One is a 40-minute session with 10 minutes of Q&A, which means 50 minutes of total session time, or a 20-minute session, which then also include 10 minutes Q&A, which means 30-minute session. So if you're new and you want just gives get a flavor of how it feels like when you present something, a 20-minute slot would be great. Otherwise, there is a 40-minute slot surely available. And then again, like last year, there's a reservation of 20% for the selection if you are a new presenter and haven't presented ever before. So feel free to submit your proposal. I guess the last date is January 7th, where they will be accepting the sessions, and then between 10 and 19 people will select their session, vote them out, and then based on most voted session, it will be presented between 15th to 17th of March. Okay, any questions there? Okay, so let's move ahead and talk about Singleton Pattern. Now this was, I forgot whose question was it, but Sam helped me with the link last week, and I also read it somewhere else. And it is a very well-known pattern that is available in nav or PC for so many years. But then I went a little bit ahead because this is not a pattern which was built for nav. It's a very common programming pattern which is used in so many software programming languages. Now, the whole idea of Singleton pattern is to restrict to have multiple classes of a of of an object which only need to be single instance. That means it's a common layer which will be used throughout the application or in multiple areas of application, but it'll only have one single pattern or single instance. Now, the way rest of the programming language treats singleton pattern, which means that it can be initiated with a limited number of objects, where n is considered to be one, and that's why one means it's a single pattern. But there can be higher values in other programming language, especially object-oriented programming language. Now, when we think about nav or business central and then try to plug in the singleton pattern, where n will always be one, that it cannot be more than one. It'll always be one when you consider singleton pattern in terms of nav or business central. Now, before I give you an example how it is implemented or where it is already implemented, and you'll all say, oh, that seems pretty simple. Uh, Here is what singleton pattern look like, implementation look like. And below you can see some images. The first one is define. And as I said, the singleton pattern means one record or in one class that is unique. So to apply a singleton pattern in nav or business central, you will define a setup table. Consider your company information as a singleton table, which will have a dummy primary key. And when I say dummy primary key, that means the primary key is hidden behind the scene and is not visible to user to do modification on that. So like the primary key of the company information is again a field called primary key. And the standard Microsoft coding guidelines suggests that it should be code 10. And that it acts as the primary key of that singleton table or record that you're adding. The second part is initiate that record that you're using as singleton pattern. That you do at a central place. And in nav or business central, you always do it in your code unit 2, which is the company initialize code unit. If you haven't seen that, that's a great code unit. And let me see if I have somewhere business central open and symbols downloaded. Okay, here it is. So if you look at code unit 2, which is used to initiate all these singleton records, that all happens in init setup table. So whenever the company initialize runs, all these records get some value, and let's see how they get it. GL setup, if it does not exist, then init and insert, which means just add one record over there, which initializes the primary key, which is the main key for the singleton pattern. So it just adds a blank record over there. In the same way, it does it for all the setups, which means all these are initiated in the company initialize code unit when you talk about initialization part of the singleton pattern. The next is enforce, which means to provide user access to that particular record so that he can define other set of values, like a card page that we have for company information. But at the same time, that page does not allow user to delete a record or insert a new record because it's already initiated in your company initialize code unit, which guarantees that there will always be one record and also guarantees that nobody can add an additional record or delete a record if it already exists. That's why on your company information page, the delete allowed and insert allowed are set as false. And then last but not least is how you use that singleton pattern. And I just took an example of the purchase invoice report, but you can find it in so many places in nav or business central, where you just do a get without calling any parameter, because the primary key of that table will be set to be blank because it doesn't initiate it with a value. It just initiated with a blank record. That's how we are able to do the GL setup.get or company info.get. So this is the way how we implement singleton pattern. And that's all I was able to find about singleton pattern. Any questions or any thoughts on that?
Hello,
Okay.
sir.
Yeah.
That question asked by me, and thanks
Yeah.
for. Right.
Okay. You got what you needed on this? Dasharath?
No. That question asked by me last week, and thanks for sharing the knowledge.
Okay. Thanks, man. Thanks. Okay. So moving ahead. The next question from the last week was Avina was trying to get the inventory for a location or trying to filter out or kind of limit totals to get the inventory value while consuming an API in Power App, right? So let's see what's the problem was there. Okay, so I went ahead and looked into the standard API that comes with Microsoft, which is this. This is the standard item page API. Now what this gives us is the display number, the display name, type, item category, ID, and all. Then it also provides us the inventory, which is a calculated value. And if you check it, it gets calculated based on the calci field that we do. Calci field of the inventory, and then it gets assigned to it. But then inventory, as we all know, is a flow field which gets calculated from item ledger entry. And there are multiple filters, flow filters, which can be used to limit this inventory count based on different parameters like location codes and other things. So now what we will try to do, because the standard API does not allow it and it's not extensible, so we cannot extend this. So what we'll do is we will copy this API from the standard Microsoft code and open our app, the new app that we had, and I'll just place it here. Let's create a folder. Okay. Okay. So inside this, I have placed this. Then I'll change its number. Okay. And I'll have to change the name also because this already exists. I'll add my prefix, whatever that is. Now, as soon as I do that, because it's in custom API, it needs the API publisher and the API group to be defined as it's in custom API. So what we'll do is here we'll just add two parameters. One is API publisher. Let's call it my name. I'm publishing this. And then API group. Let's call it demo. Still, we see some errors here. I'm not going into details of it, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these because these are parts which are sub forms or sub pages attached to this API page. If you want them, then you might then you need to have a dependency of the API v2 app on this particular app. if you need it. If you don't need it, that's okay. For the demo, we'll assume that we don't need it. So I'll just go ahead and remove this. It's all possible to kind of get this completely compiled by just adding one dependency on this app if required. So now this is done, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and publish this. Okay. 5. Okay, so this got published. I can't see anything on the GUI for sure as it gets published. But let's go ahead and use our extension that we have. I've said it multiple times, but I'll show it again, which is, where is that extension? REST client. To kind of make a query on the Business Central environment that we have. Now what we are going to do is I'll take some from our old projects that or all old demos that we have done. And I'll just copy paste some content here so that it's easier. I'll add a new file and I'll call it as demo.http. So the first thing that we do is we fetch all the APIs, which we do something like this. Okay. This gives me all standard Microsoft APIs. This does not include the API that we just built in. It only includes the API which are part of the standard Microsoft. Now for each API, we need a company to call it from. So the second command that we use is to get fetch all the companies. And then we also store the company into one of the variable, which is, let's say, this. So as soon as I send the request, I'll get the company ID set here, which is the first company, Cronus USA, in this. Okay. Now that's done. Now in a standard Word, what I'll have to do to get items if I'm using the standard API, to do something like this. Let me see if I have, yes, get base URL. API v2.0 companies. Okay. And then let me copy the items reference. Okay. And then authorization is same. So this is calling the standard item page, which shows me all the fields which are available from Microsoft with inventory 3 for item 1896S. If I have to call the custom API that I've just built in, I'll just have to change this query to a little bit, which is get items custom API, let's say. I'll do the same thing. Let me copy paste that as it. But the URL changes when you're doing a custom API. And after the API keyword, you have to add the publisher name, which in my case is this. And then the group name, which is demo. And then the company ID will remain same. And then this is the name of the API that I had, which is items, entity set name. Now, when I do this, it'll return me the same results as it did into this items one, because they are one and the same thing. So now let's go ahead and add the location filter into this so that we can utilize this for our filtration of inventory, or kind of apply the flow filter into my items inventory. Okay, so let's add it after inventory, so before inventory, so that we can see it. You just add it as a field. The field is what? Location filter, which is a flow filter in the item table. And just to keep it simple so that I don't have problems typing it later, Okay. So this is being set. Now I can just publish this. Going forward, I can utilize it, and I'm trying to filter out the inventory based on this API. So this got published. Stop it. Okay. Go back to our demo. Now this time when I run it, it should also show me the field, which is our location filter. Location filter is blank. Now, as we can see that all the items, or the item 8096S is 3. So let's first go into the application and see items that we have. These are the item. Let me try to limit total it. Okay, and let's do a location filter. And let's filter it based on East. Oh, sorry, it got removed for some reason. Location filter and East. So as soon as I do that, the only inventory available is for 1968S. And otherwise, there is inventory, good amount of inventory on other locations for sure. When I try to apply this filter on my API, it should only return me inventory only on 1968S, it seems. Yes. So let's try to do that here. So I have already added item. Now I should filter it out, which is pretty simple. I'll just have to apply the filter. And the field name that I've given is location filter. And then I equate it to based on EQ. These are keywords in OData URL that you have to apply. Equate, not equal, NE, and things like that. So once you have done that, let's send a request to this filtered set of results of item where the location filter is already applied at East. And you will notice that we are getting inventory 0 in most of the item, because now the location filter is applied. And let's see that item. And we get one item where there's an inventory which is 1968S with the location filter East of inventory 3, which we just saw into the application, which is here, based on this calculation. So in the similar manner, if you have to apply other filters, it's not that complex to add into the API page. And then you can fetch the value. There's a -4 on 1000. So let's check that also. Why it is saying inventory -4 in East? Oh, okay. Well, it's not showing. Oh, maybe that's has been filtered here. But okay. So if you have to apply flow filters into like any other filter, as we are seeing over there in the application, you can just modify that API page if required, and not modify, actually create a copy of it and then make it as a custom API and then add your filters. So like for inventory, what else you need is what is that field? Yeah, you can have any of these filters: global dimension 1 or 2, location, drop shipment variant, lot, serial number, unit of measure, and package number filter. If needed, you can apply these filters on your item custom item API page, because the base item API page is set to be non-extendable. So we cannot extend that page as we saw here on the source code, but you can always create a copy of it and then modify it based on the filters that you need. Avinav, is it something that you did or you did it in a different way? Otherwise, you can.
Sort of actually, I was not. This thing is what I was just looking to get the records on a Power Apps side.
Right.
So yeah, so I have used that API. I created a page with the API, put the location filter over there. I've created a new page based on what you're doing. I was doing the same way, but on the Power App side, I'm not able to get that filter out. So that's why there's a bit on tricky side over there. So I use collections and then I've done my coding over there.
Okay, sounds good. I'll have to play with Power Apps someday.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
But
Sounds good.
That is useful and more interesting going further.
Yeah, because the data that goes from here sits into that dataverse in before you use it into Power Apps, right?
Right.
So yeah, so I don't think that
Maybe not the dataverse because you have the direct connector. So I guess when you are pointing your Power Apps to your data source, it just asks you to which environment you want to connect to the Power Apps as a data source, and then you get the connectors. So whatever the APIs which are there, the base Microsoft APIs, they will be shown as a connector in the Power App side, and then you can
Okay.
use the APIs and then those connector and to get the data.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
Sounds good. Okay, any other thoughts, questions about this? Adding filters or not? Okay. Okay, moving to some other questions that we have before. Yeah, Vijay.
Can you upload this sample project which we have just created somewhere so that we can take it as a reference to develop?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll put it in GitHub.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, so there were some questions. I'll be taking some today and then some maybe in the future. Shahid had a question and he's not here today in the meeting. And his question was around how you access BC web client by name instead of IP address. Now, there is a mapping in your host file where you have to map an IP to a name. The other ways to handle or to access a web client or a ISS hosted website using name instead of IP address is to create a certificate based on the server name. Now, once the certificate is attached, then the certificate name is used to access the server rather than the IP address. So if it is just within the organization where you want to replace the IP address with the name, then use the host file to map the name of the server with the IP address, which is placed in your Windows etc folder. Otherwise, you can, let me see if I have that file somewhere open. Drivers, yes. So if you search for drivers in your run, you reach to this part, and there used to be a host file earlier. I forgot that, I guess. Anybody remember where that file used to be, the host file, where you do the linkage between IP? Yes, this is the file, host file. In this, you map your IP to your server name. This is the file, yeah. See Windows System 32 driver etc. This is a file where you can map the IP to the name if it is within the organization. If you want it to be available on more or less public web, then purchase or develop a certificate based on the server name attach that certificate to your ISS and your service tier, and then that certificate name will be used instead of IP address. And I'm pretty sure I've written an article about it in NAV versions. You can surely refer that. Okay, next up is from Balaji, and Balaji is here. Is it possible to write data into NAV or BC using application using OData web service that the base product offers? Yes, it is possible, Balaji, and let's see. Let me open my Business Central. And I don't know about the standard OData, but if I have, let's say, go to a web service page, and let's say I want to create customers, just to take an example, Balaji, and I add the customer page here, and let's say customer web. Okay, publish this. This gave me this OData v4 URL. Now I can copy the link, and let me find my postman. Where is my postman? Okay. 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 Here is my postman, and let's do a new query. So let's first do a get, and let me know if I have to zoom this in and if it is not visible. This is the URL that we saw, or maybe this is not, this is super big. Let me get the correct one. Here it is. Okay. If I do a get on this, and I've already set up my username and password for sure, authorization based on basic authentication, and I have my username and password here. So this will return me whatever the customers that I have in my database. Now let's pick one of these customers. Okay. Here it is. Change this get to post. And then in the body, you can use this as raw JSON and paste whatever you copied from there. Remove the fields that you don't need. So let's say I'll be using this much. And then you don't know about the OData, so you will not use it. The number is automatically defined because there is a number series attached to my customer numbers. So I can remove that, and let's name it as Balaji. And this one search name will come automatic when Balaji's name will get validated. I don't need balance. So whatever fields you need, you can just keep them here. If you don't need them, just remove them. And let's just keep the address fields. Let's say Delhi, India, and let it be US and all these things. Now first, let's check, do we have a customer like this? So we have till 50,000 customers. These are our customers. Now, when you do this post with the OData feed that you got from your web services, you've changed it to post, you have generated your feed that you want to send in forms of JSON. And when you send this, in here, you will see a record was written with the number C0080, and these are the values that are set for it. So let's go back into our Business Central. refresh this screen and we'll see that we have a new customer created Balaji with the address that we listed here in our OData feed. Balaji, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay, you had one more question which I didn't add because we have talked about it last week, I guess. About
Yeah,
the
templates, right? The new
yeah,
nav.
yeah.
Yes.
Anything
That's
specific
also.
on that?
No, that was also answered.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks. That's good. The last question that I have kept for today, and I needed some clarity, that's why I've added this, was from Ankit, and he's saying that he created a code unit where he has done some calculation related to sales order, and after the calculation, he's trying to call the report of batch post sales order. We have also added an event subscriber for release sales document, and passed the error if calculation is not matched. Okay, now what I'm doing is I have created a job queue for that. And if the job queue log entries, the error comes up in error message. The status of job queues also becomes an error, which makes sense. And on every day, I must start the job queue. I want that status to be always ready. What can I do for that? But let me understand what he's trying to do. He have created event subscriber and pass the error if calculation does not match. Okay. Now, the way I understood, Ankit, that you have some kind of crazy calculation that you're doing, which need to match before the sales order gets posted. And during the posting, it is obviously going to call the release sales document. And while it is releasing, you are calling your calculation. Now, if I know it correctly, the batch post sales order skips the order where there is an error message. And let me open that somewhere if I can. I think that's what happened. As in, if there are any kind of issues in a document during posting, it doesn't post it, but doesn't end up with an error message, as far as I know. This doesn't seem 296. Oh, sorry. As far as I know, it sets a parameter and it runs the batch, but it doesn't break it in the middle. Temp error message, sales post management error message. If this batch, it sets those parameters in code unit 80, those parameters get added. Set batch error. If it runs, yes, that's what my assumption was. If the sales post batch was run, and it says otherwise get error message, and it finds error message dot set records and error message dot run. Okay. Okay. So let's go back to Ankit's question. If your calculation is not matching, then job queue will fail in every case for sure, because if there is an error message, then the job queue fails because it runs on something called as task scheduler. And if you haven't noticed it, the job queue is no longer run on NAS, it runs on a task. And a task requires 3 sets of parameter, a code unit to run, and on which company, and the third is in case of failure, what need to happen. So when a job queue fails, it calls up a code unit, which is a job queue failure, which then converts the job queue status to an error message. So let me show you what I'm saying. Code units. So this is the job queue error handler. So whenever the job queue run, it runs the job queue enqueue, and in case of the error, automatically the job queue error handler runs. Now when this runs, this converts the status to error and then record the error in your sorry, job queue log entry. I'll not suggest to do anything here because this is not specific to one job that you're doing. It will impact all the jobs. So don't do anything here. But if it is something that you can do by creating your own task, then I would rather go that route. That let me show you how you do that. If I have a code unit somewhere, let me create a new one. What you can do is 90,000. Sorry, 20,000. Okay, and then you can actually do a task scheduler dot create task. Now if you notice, there are specific parameters into it, which are the code unit ID that is supposed to be running when this task runs. What is the failure code unit ID? In case when the code unit that the task is trying to run, if it fails with an error message, what happens then can be written into a separate code unit called failure code unit ID. If you don't want a failure code unit ID, you can just keep it 0. Is ready is just a boolean to make sure that it runs. It's ready to be executed. On which company you want to run it, at what time, and then the record ID, which is the reference of that record. This automatically creates a job queue kind of thing behind the scene in a table called task. And then those tasks are automatically run by the application based on the defined date and time that you have defined here. So if it is something that you can handle without job queue by creating tasks, that's also possible. And then there are other possibilities with this to check if that task exists or not. Because when you create a task, you get a GUID back. Create task returns you a GUID to kind of show you what it can do, the GUID. And then there is one more overload to it, which is at how much timeout you want if it goes to an endless loop or things like that. So I completely didn't got your I have a vague idea of what you are trying to do, but if you can do it based on task, that will make it completely custom the way you want it, and you don't have to rely on the job queue per se. You can have a table or a field in the table which can record what kind of errors it's generating if it is just based on your custom calculation. And you can just show them on the page that this order was not posted from the batch post because of this calculation did not match or whatever that is. So I hope that answered your question, Ankit. If not, let me know. And we'll surely talk about it next week if you reply me on the same forum.
Hi,
Balaji,
sir.
you're saying something? Yeah.
Yeah, so I have query this. In BC19, there is a new feature, right? The recovery job queue unit, like if there is a job which is going to fail, there is a backend recovery job queue unit which will be running in another session and it will automatically try to restart it. So this issue, whenever the job queue fails, it is not getting to restart. There is a problem in the like older versions prior to BC19 or BC18 or the web clients of other Navision versions, right? In BC19, it is handled.
Yeah, but this is a different situation, Balaji, because at any point, if a job queue ends up with an error message, it will show its status as error.
Yeah.
Right? It will try to attempt it to rerun based on how many attempts you have defined in the job queue. But if it's an error message, then it will show the error message. What you're talking about is because it never resets, even if what is that issue? I forgot. But an error job queue, I don't think it will ever reset it back to normal.
Yeah, the error which I meant is because of connection issue or some maybe
This is a let's say this is an error
validation
of
error.
like there is nothing to ship.
Okay,
Yeah,
that is
there's
fine.
no
Yeah.
content. Yeah. In that case, it will remain as error because that's a program error.
Okay,
That's
but
what it
otherwise,
behaves.
what is
Yeah,
mentioned in BC19, it is already there, and in older versions, it is not there. Is my understanding right?
right.
Okay.
They have
Thank
fixed it in BC19. Okay. So those were all the questions that I had for today. Anything else anyone have?
It's not a question. It's just explaining the problem I've run into.
Go ahead.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me just paste the error message into the chat. This
Okay.
is basically what I got. So to give you an idea of what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to set up a server, virtual server, installing on Windows Server 2019 standard. I'm trying to install an AV 2018. Okay, everything was set up properly. The service tier was set up. I'm using a demo Cronus database and a demo license. But when I try to set up the service tier, I get this error message: the dependency service or group failed to start. I'm not sure whether this is related to an AV.
You said which version? 2018, right?
It's actually version 11. Is that?
Yeah. So I am not sure about. I think I know for a fact that when you go into the services, there is a There used to be a dependency. Okay. Of this, yeah, here it is, HTTP service, which is required for each nav or business central service to be running. Now, when you and in some cases, what happens, and I've seen it way, I don't know how long ago, but there was some scenarios where HTTP was set to not to auto start, or there was some other issues around it. So in the service panel, if you look for HTTP service, and when I'm talking about service panel, that is this panel. Okay. So when you come into the service, you see the dependency, and then when you find the dependency, then you can check for that service here and see is it set to be automatic start or not. Because sometime in some server, it might have been disabled or manual.
No, the service is definitely set to be automatically started.
No, not this one, the dependency one.
Actually, to have it on my, yeah, let me just look for it. Okay, so dependencies, I have yeah, it's definitely HTTP, but it's automatically starting.
No, but now it's in the same service panel, search for the service name HTTP. There will be a service named as HTTP.
Okay, hang on. Well, I don't have any HTTP service, just Hyper-V and stuff.
You can't see HTTP service and services.msc, right? That's what you're saying?
Yeah. Is my voice breaking up? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no.
I don't have HTTP service running here. Just Hyper-V, not HTTP. Maybe it's a different name.
Maybe. Let me see on my system. HTTP. Yeah, I also don't see it. Earlier it used to be. Let me search. Oh, it seems that they have removed it from Windows 10 and maybe in the same time from the server operating system. And it says something like this: while attempting to print send, I send that this is not found because HTTP service is not there. And the person is saying go into registry, navigate to this path, and make sure that the start value is set to 3, which means automatic. Please start and
So
check the
the
problem.
HTTP service would be visible.
No, it's now sitting for some reason it seems it's sitting behind the scene.
Actually, I'm not running Windows 10. It's Windows Server 2019.
Yeah, but I'm running Windows 10 on my machine, and I also cannot see the HTTP service. So, oh, there is, just try this command maybe. The prompt each time command line hit enter scqc, and let me try it with you because I also don't see it. I don't have a problem, but I know for the fact that this is what it is. Okay, so let me try doing sc.
Oh, the first command return a success. Let me just start the second. Let's start HTTP. Yeah, apparently it does exist. It started it for some reason.
Okay, now try to run that.
Yeah, I'm the same problem.
Okay, let me look for it. And is this the error message that you're getting, 1068?
Yeah, this is not on my own computer. This is a server I'm trying to connect to via 40 client. And each time I try to run the service tier, an AV 2018, I run into this problem. So the service tier doesn't start. SQL server instance is running perfectly, correctly, no problem there. It's just that an AV doesn't start.
It seems it's not related to NAV, but it's a server issue because there are so many articles about it.
Well, I mean, the prerequisites don't really forbid using an AV 2018 with that specific version of Windows Server. It's fine to use an AV with Windows Server 2019.
Yeah. What is this one? Turn on your Windows firewall, and then this is
Yeah, I tried that
antivirus.
one.
You tried all this?
Yes.
Okay, let me see if I find something.
No, but just out of the, I mean, first impression you've got, is this related to NAV?
No, because if it is related to NAV, then it would have given you at least something, but it seems it's related to so many other things because 1068, you cannot turn out your internet sharing.
Actually, if you go to the event viewer, it doesn't, candidly or explicitly mention NAV. It's just says.
That's what I'm saying. It's not, it's because you're getting that error with the NAV. We are assuming that it is related to NAV, but it's actually not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Anything else? Okay, if not, then next week I'm out of the town, just traveling to Delhi, so I'll not be available. I'll be traveling on 27th exactly on this date, on on this day next week. So we'll not be doing 27th. I'll try to schedule it on December 4th, the next one. Okay.
Well, thank you, Saurav, again, and have a nice trip.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Balaji.
Thank you, Saurabh.
Thanks. Thank you. Just
Thank you, Saurabh. Goodbye.
bye, Fazan. Let me know how it goes with that second query.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah?
Great.
Sounds good. Thanks.